Okay, we left off page Yud Beis 12, 12a. Ernie's not here today?
He told me that he has to do something. I think he has to do something with somebody else.
I hear. Okay. We quoted yesterday, there was a discussion whether a master could say to a slave, Asi mi v'enu zonach, work for me and I'm not going to feed you. This is an Evet Kanani, right? 12a. Why? So how is he going to support himself? He'll go and beg. But all the earnings belong to the master. So the Gemara says no, a master cannot say that to a slave. Asi mi v'enu zonach, but he could say, take your earnings, and of the earnings, cover your whatever you need. What about if there's a shortfall? Then it's the slave's problem. It's not the master's problem. But with a wife, since the husband has to support his wife, if the wife, and he says to his wife, "Si masi yadayich b'zonosayich," you go to work and let your earnings cover whatever your needs are. And it doesn't cover her needs, he has to make up the shortfall. Why? Because that's his obligation. He has an obligation to support his wife. Right? That's what we left off yesterday. So we quoted a Baraisa. The Baraisa says, what about if a slave is killed inadvertently? He's nari miklot. So it says, the master does not have to feed him. And not only does he have to feed him, he takes the Masi Yadayim. So it's clearly from the Baraisa that what? That he can't say. It says he doesn't have to feed him, he takes the Masi Yadayim. So clearly he could say to the slave, I'm taking your earnings, and in terms of your own support, go beg. That's what it says. So my answer is that it's being ladofa. What happens if the slave earns more than his needs are? So the differential, which is more, has to go to the master. He has no right to retain that. Ladofa. Okay, that's where we left off. If he said to the slave, you should take your earnings and cover your basic amenities, so what does it say that he takes the Masi Yadayim, he takes his earnings? The answer is Ladofa. He earned more than he needs. So the difference he takes versus Ladofa Pshita. I mean, the Baraisa has to tell me that when the slave earns more than he needs, that the additional earnings goes to the master, if that's understood. Pshita. So in that verse, the same it came the Chiles Lo Yovle. Since the master has the right to deny him when he doesn't cover his own needs, the master doesn't have to make up the shortfall. So maybe when he makes a little bit more, he has a right to take that in reserve to cover the times we have a shortfall. Because ultimately, the master will be the beneficiary of that. Yeah. On that, the Gemara says, that he has no right. That if he makes more than he needs, he doesn't save it for a rainy day. And what's even the consideration? If actually today you made more than you need, of course it goes to the master. What would have been the consideration otherwise? Ultimately, we're talking about, he's not overdoing it here. He's covering his need where there's a shortfall. But who's the ultimate beneficiary? The master is the beneficiary. No, he's not hiring. He owns the slave. No, but the master is the beneficiary. So I think if that's the case, if he's saving it for the time that he doesn't have, so then when he eats, when he uses that money, the master is benefiting because the slave is the chattel of the master, right? So you would think, therefore, maybe he has a right to retain it for the time that he doesn't cover all his needs, the expense of his needs. Kamashmalan, he has to give it back.
Well, that means that the slave is working elsewhere, not directly for the.
Why not? Why not?
No, I'm asking.
Either way. So Mar asks, if that's the case, what do we have to speak about this in the context that he killed and he's not in the Ir Miklot, his Sidri refuge? This will be the same considered any time. When he earns more than he needs, maybe he would be able to retain the additional earnings for the time that he's not able to cover all his needs. Why are we speaking specifically in the Ir Miklot? This chidush. So gedait Chamida b'chai oved leichius et fei. It says b'chai that when he's in the Ir Miklot, with the Sidri refuge, we have an obligation to maintain him at an advanced level, the b'chai. So therefore, if he should have the shortfall, it'll be difficult for him. So therefore, we should allow him to take the additional money in the Ir Miklot. Kamashmalan, no, we don't. We don't. Rob, good. Robbie, you were saying something.
No.
Okay, good.
So he goes to another mikvot because he has missed the initial, so he's
Treated like a Jew. Woman kills inadvertently, she goes to Ir Miklot also.
About this whole thing about the Ir Miklot. Yes, through the ketubah, the husband has certain obligations to the wife. She has obligations to him too.
Okay,
Okay, maybe not reflected in the ketubah, but in the role of a wife.
correct.
Okay. Now, if she lands up in the Ir Miklot, she is no longer able to perform the obligations of a wife. Man lives in another city, she's exiled. One would not expect that he has to go with her.
He doesn't have to go with her.
He doesn't have to go with her. So now she's no longer able to
Perform as a wife.
perform as a wife. So wouldn't you say that not attributing intent or anything, she has breached an agreement? And therefore
What happens if a woman becomes ill
Yeah.
and she can't perform as a wife? Does he have to continue maintaining his responsibilities to a wife as a husband in terms of financial? The answer is yes.
Yes.
As long as she was not negligent
But that would
in her duties, the husband has to continue maintaining his obligation.
I would say that concept is embedded in the ketubah.
It is. And that's why we have a parak called Tamadir in Ksubas tells us when does the woman forfeit the Ksubah, when doesn't she forfeit the Ksubah. A woman says to her husband, I will not participate in your conjugal relationship with me. It's the basis for divorce. She forfeits the Ksubah. Or let's say she does other things. Every day we penalize her, she loses a certain percentage of Ksubah until finally there's no Ksubah, then she's divorced. But if she becomes not well,
at any time, but then he has to pay the
exactly.
So if she goes to our mikvot the first day, he says, I don't like,
You want to divorce her, gesundheit, but you pay the Ksubah.
He goes, shows it.
Right? He could divorce her. He doesn't have to keep her.
I would have thought that the issue of the Baral Miklot might be grounds for terminating the ketubah.
The Gemara, we had the Gemara in Kedushin.
Inadvertent, but it's
The Gemara
also
says in Kedushin, what happens?
negligent.
What happens if a woman wants, a husband wants to live in Yerushalayim, and she wants to live elsewhere? Does she have to go with him, or doesn't she have to go with him? We had the discussion. Or let's say she's in Yerushalayim, he wants to go elsewhere, right? She has a right to make certain demands in terms of neighborhoods in Yerushalayim, in Israel, right? He has to come up to her. She doesn't have to go down to him at certain times. So if that is the case, that's not a breach of the marriage agreement. So he has to. You don't like it, okay? So you don't like it. You want to divorce her, but factually you have to maintain the financial responsibilities. The Torah says that if a woman, anybody kills inadvertently, has to go to seek refuge. Why am I there? Because that's what Torah dictates. So if that's what Torah dictates, I have no choice. How did it come about? Whatever way it came about, because she killed inadvertently. She had to go there.
Rabbi, is it analogous to a woman being kidnapped where you're feared to ransom her? That you have to somehow you have to take her back. So your miklot's be similar to that. The old services are gone from you, but you have a fear to take her back.
We'll take her back.
You have to ransom her.
So what are you going to do with her? She has to stay there forever until the girl dies. How are we going to ransom her?
I'm addressing the lack of services. I mean, you don't divorce her because she does.
He can do whatever he wants. He can do whatever he
Even when
wants.
she's kidnapped?
I mean, he has to get something. He can't because he has to give the get to her. She's not here. She can't give her the get.
Your miklot, you could go to the Yerushalayim and give it together.
1 second. V'od miriktoni seifo. It says in the seifo, Avol isha shegolso miklot balachayim zaruseo. It says a woman who's been exiled to Ir Miklot. We haven't yet spoken about the woman. Now we're speaking about the wife. If a woman was exiled to Ir Miklot, her husband is obligated to cover her mizonos, her sustenance. So evidently, if he's what did he say to the wife? He didn't say take your earnings and you should cover your own financial needs. Because if that is the case, why is he chayv mizonos sale? So bechlal lo amalo. He didn't say to her, "See my shidach mizonosayich." He didn't say to her, "Take your earnings and cover your needs." The amalo bylaw, because if her husband said that, am I chayiv? So why does it say he's obligated to say it? He didn't say it. And even though he didn't say it, it says, but if we're dealing with a slave, he could tell the man. He could take his earnings and tell him to go beg. Umeresefet lo amalos. If the sefer is speaking clearly, we didn't say that to her. Reisha namid lo amalo. Lay, he didn't say to the slave, take your earnings and cover yourself. So if that's the case, we have a proof from the Brisa that a master could say to a slave, I'm taking your earnings and go beg for your needs. On that one says lo lam, no. The Omalei, he did say it. He said to him, take your earnings and cover your needs. The Isha below Sofka, what was the wife, where she doesn't earn enough to cover all her needs. So in that situation, he has to make up the difference. It says if he says to her, take your earnings and cover, it should be in the place of my support. What happens if she covers sufficient? Her earnings are sufficient to cover all her needs. It's just not a problem. Wait 1 second. But what happens if it doesn't? If it doesn't, then he has to make up the shortfall. You have to make a chiddush. You tell him, if her earnings cover her needs, he doesn't have to give her anything. If they don't, he does have to make up the difference. So what's the chiddush? What's the Brisa tell him? It's a chiddush. Of course, if her earnings don't cover, he has to make up. And if they do cover, but what's the chiddush? He says something phenomenal. David says until him that the honor of the princess is when she's concealed. She doesn't expose herself to a public situation. So Rashi said something interesting. Women always took in sewing and crocheting and knitting, all that. Now, did she actually go through the community trying to solicit business? A woman going out to solicit business is a breach of modesty. So in a community where they know who she is, people know it's a peril the seamstress. Okay, so they bring the things. What about if you're in Miklot? People don't even know who you are. They don't even want to know who you are. So where does she have to go? She has to go out and initiate. She has to drum up business. So you'd say, if that's the only way she could cover her needs, she has to go and compromise her tznius, her modesty. In that case, I'll say, the husband can't say to her, go earn. Because here it's much more complicated. Here it's at a cost. She has to compromise her tznius. So I would think, even when it's maspekes, even when she could do it, she should not do it, and the husband has an obligation to cover her full needs. The chiddush of the Brisa is, nevertheless, no. She has to compromise this area, and she has to go out and solicit the business, and if there should be a shortfall, he has to make up the difference. If there is no shortfall, then she has to do what she has to do. Whatever it is. It's always the question. What about it's always a woman has the ability to turn, she says, I'm not interested in want to work. You know something? So you sit home, don't work, I'm not what's his name? He doesn't have to support her. She could be self-sufficient, he doesn't have to support her.
Well, a woman is released from the mikveh, the husband is obligated to take her back.
He can do whatever he wants. He wants a divorce, he can divorce her.
Yeah, but normally if he has no ground for divorce,
There's a date, he can do what he wants.
And what about a slave? If a slave is released from...
it's still a slave. It's a slave in the Yer Miklat. It's a slave outside the Yer Miklat.
But he has to take him back.
Of course we'll take him back. It's his chattel. It's his
property.
It's his property. Okay. So until now we have no proof that a master could say to a slave, I'll take your earnings and you go beg. The only thing he could say to us that what? That your earnings should be the equivalent of what should cover your needs, and therefore that absolves the master from supporting him. Lemekatanoi. This discussion of it, could he say could he say to his slave, I'm taking your earnings, and what? You go beg. This is a machlokes down. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer. Yochel eved loma l'rabo. B'shnei batzoros. A slave, this eved can say to his master, in years which are semi-famine years, o parnaseni, he could say either support me, or hotzieni lecherus, or emancipate me. Here, there's the slave dictating to the master. So what are we speaking about? Is the master supporting him, not supporting him? So evidently he's not, because it's o parnaseni, either support me or let me go, emancipate me. Chamomrim harushus biyad rabo. He says, the slave cannot dictate to the master, and he doesn't have to emancipate him. It seems to me he doesn't have to support him. What do you mean he doesn't have to support him? Evidently, there's earnings. That means he's taking the earnings, and he's telling the slave, go back. Well, the Gemara's going to ask in a moment. If this is the discussion, what do they have to discuss Shnei Batzores? Anytime. Right? What does that have to do Shnei Batzores? It's semi-famine years. But it says, according to Chomim, he can't, Hushus Biyad Rabbu, the master dictates. And the slave cannot dictate to the master. Rishim Gelu says the slave has a right to dictate to the master. Either support me or let me go. Cut me loose. Chum says the master does whatever he wants. So seemingly, what's my law? So what's the argument? The Marsha of Vayakhel, one is of the opinion that he could say, I'm taking your earnings and go beg. The Marsha of Eni Yochel, he cannot. So the Chachomim who say that he cannot dictate, the slave cannot dictate to the master, that means he can. So Marsha V'Tizbara, is there even such a consideration that the master could take his earnings and give him nothing? Hi o parnasenu hotzinu l'cheirus. What does the slave say to the master? If we're saying he's taking his earnings and tell him to go big, he says, either support me or free me. I parnaseni, he should say, either support me or tein li masa yodai. B'parnasosi, that's what he should say. Either support me or let me take my earnings and use it to cover my needs. That's what it should say. Not free me. How could he dictate freedom? V'od ma'ishnei batzoros. What are we speaking about? It's semi-famine years. And if it wouldn't be famine years, you could have the same discussion. If the master wants to take the earnings and tells him to go cover his own keep, does he have a right? Go beg. Eloch ma'iskin. What are we speaking about? The omalo say mas yodechem zonasecho. He says to the slave, your earnings should cover your financial needs, your sustenance. Ubeshnei batzoros l'sik. And because it's famine years, he's not able to make ends meet. He's not able to make ends meet. So the slave in a state of semi-starvation, because what he's earning is a pittance, it barely covers his needs. Now, he says, either support me, he says to the master, or let me free. Why does he have a right to say that? Because when people see that he has the ability to dictate to the master, that's how dire it is, people have Rahmanas. Because he's going to go beg now. If he's going to go beg, people say, you know something, you're a Canaan slave, we're not giving you. But by seeing that he has a right to dictate to the master, although he can't, to be emancipated, that will evoke Rachmim and other people to help to feed him during this difficult time. Jews have Rachmanis on people who are freemen. Of course, when you're a freeman, you're a full Jew. I have a Nami, he says, Mandim Rachim B'nei Chori, whoever has compassion for a Ben Chorin, Eved Nami Rechuvim Rachim. He has the same feeling towards an Eved. Why? So Rashi says, because it's Chad Mitzvah Kisha. In terms of his behavior, he behaves exactly like a Jew, even though he's not a Jew. That is sufficient that people should have Rachmanis on him. Shmuel says no. That unless he's a free man, people will not have Rachmanis on him. And because he's in this predicament, this precarious situation, the question is, how do we make his situation better? By people understanding that he has a right to be a full Jew, only because, but if he's not a full Jew, they're not going to look at an Eved. Chum said we disagree. And a person who has compassion for a Jew, will have compassion for the Eved.
I might say that a person, the reason he's a slave, it's not my obligation. His master, that's...
Speaking about the master himself can't afford to cover him.
Well, people don't know that.
It's Shnei Batzoros. It's famine years. It's famine years. We're talking about it's famine years.
Yeah, everybody's trying to make ends meet.
Right, exactly.
This is not my problem. This is the
So what? Jews don't give tzedakah?
No, but
Well, why?
you free him, and if he's a free person, then the tzedakah, this mitzvah of tzedakah doesn't apply to me in this case.
That's exactly why Rishim Gelu says that he has a right to dictate freedom, because then they will help him out as a slave. But it seems to be, it's not only because the master is responsible. You're not a full Jew. We support Jews. We don't support people not Jewish. That you have mitzvahs, you're not a Jew. You're not a functioning Jew.
How's the message tell the slave, give me all your earnings, and you go back.
Why not?
When is he supposed to beg? He has to take time out from his work.
He works only so many hours. Let him go beg at nighttime.
Okay.
Okay?
He's limited to how many hours.
You're right. There's no question he can't let him starve. He can't take the earnings. Everybody agrees and let him starve. Let's say he lives in the community. There's nobody to ask to help him out. So we'll say, I'll take your earnings, go starve. It's not permitted. It's like killing him. Toshma. So we still have a question. Could he say to the slave, I'll take your earnings and go beg? So far we say he could say masu yodechem zonasecho. Let your earnings cover what? Cover your sustenance. Toshma, the Omer Rav. Hamagdish de Abdo. Person who consecrates the hands of his slave. You have this? He didn't consecrate the whole slave. The hands of the slave. So the slave himself is not the possession of Hegdish, but the hands are Hegdish. Now the question is, anything he earns with those hands automatically what? Are holy. They're consecrated. Talk about it. You can free the slave. Right now, he's an Eved Kanani. He has a master. The master goes and consecrates his hands. So there's a partnership. The hands belong to Hegdish. The rest of the body belongs to him. So that means the fruits of the hands, the earnings of the hands are going to be what? Are going to be Hegdish. So how's he supposed to eat? And we're speaking about what the master could say to the slave. Say, Masi Yadechem Zonasecho. Let your earnings cover your what? Your financial needs. But the moment he earns, that money that he earns has Kedusha. He's not permitted to benefit from it. So how's the slave able to what? To maintain himself? How does he survive it? Gemara says something interesting. Hamagchi yidei avdo oseved love v'ochel. He goes borrows, and then he eats what he borrows. V'osapareya. Then he earns and he repays the debt. Shema mino. So what do we see from here? Yochel Rav Loma Levet Asim Veinu Zonoch. That the master could say to the slave, I'll take your earnings, but I'm not going to support you. Why? Because same thing. I put him in a predicament by consecrating his hands. He has to go borrow. Right? He can't force the master to feed him. What does he have to go borrow from a third party? The master should feed him. Because it's only as a result of the master what? Consecrating his hands. So evidently we see from here that what? Yochel Rav Loma Levet Asim Veinu Zonoch. Work for me, I have your earnings, and I'm not what? I'm not going to support you, feed you.
What does it mean to consecrate his hands?
The slave is a chattel. Could you consecrate an animal? Could I consecrate a chair? I'm consecrating his hands. Whatever that means, whatever those hands will produce, the fruits of the labor of those hands is Hegdish. The item is consecrated. Okay? Shmamino, so evidently we see from here that the master could say to him, Asimi vinizon, chochma eskinon, bebal lo mizonos. You hear this? We're speaking about the master is feeding him. So if he's feeding him, so what does he have to borrow? Ihochi lamai love v'ochel. If the master is feeding him, why is he borrowing to eat? Right? Good question. So there's no proof the master is supporting him. So if the master is supporting, what's he borrowing to eat? Yeah, he wants to have a little more. He wants a little more. See, the Gemara gets a question. If it's a necessity, we allow you to what? To take of the money that you earn. But the man wants more than he needs. Ladofo. Hegdish could say to him, when before your hands were consecrated, let's say the master would earn something, the slave would earn something, and the slave would say, well, no, I earn more than my keep. I'd like to keep the extra. What would the master say to him? It's irrelevant what you would like. I want the difference. So is Hegdish worse than the master? Before he was consecrated, the slave couldn't say that to the master. All of a sudden now that his hands are consecrated, he has a right to ask for hadofo, for the additional. Hashdinami taskla lo hadofo. Until now, it was sufficient without giving you the extra. So now that you're consecrated, now you want the extra. Okay? So my answer is very simple. Hegdish gufi nechali. Ki hechi de lishbach avdek. Hegdish is agreeable to this. Because they want the value of the Eved should increase. So if he's sufficiently maintained and sustained, it's better. What is the master? The master is one thing, is interested in profits. Hegdish is interested in upgrading the quality of whatever they have. Because he's meant for redemption. They'll be redeemed, they'll get a higher dollar for it. But what is an ordinary person? He's interested in taking as much money as he can out of the business, so to say. Okay? So Hegdish will say, we're more than happy he should have the additional portion, or a little extra spending money. Why? Because this actually enhances him. Okay? You know, there's a question, it's discussed in Bava Metzia. If a person steals Poch Mishav Pruta, is he in violation of Lo Sigzo? You hear the question, Howard? The Torah says you're not permitted to steal. Everybody agrees that Shav Pruta is money. What about if something's supposed to be Shav Pruta? Less than a penny. Are you in violation of stealing? Okay, so you'd say Chatzi Shir. Money is a Pruta, so less than a Pruta is Chatzi Shir. Okay, maybe. What? Will be also in the Torah. It's interesting. The Rambam says in Hilchos Gzeila, Geneva Gzeila, the person steals less than a penny. He says he's in violation. He doesn't say you're in violation of Lo Sigzo. It's not permitted on the Torah level. That's what Rambam said. The Kesef Mishnah says, what's the violation? Chatzi Shir. You're not permitted to steal a full measure. So a partial measure is Chatzi Shir. Right? Maybe, but it's going to be difficult from this Gemara. The Gemara says that it says he borrows and he eats and Hegdish is agreeable to it, and then he earns and he repays. We have a problem. The moment he earns anything, his hands are consecrated. What is the status of that money? Hegdish. So if it's Hegdish, how could he use Hegdish money to pay off a debt? He borrowed to maintain himself. So, but the moment he earns the money, it's Hegdish. It's consecrated. And you're not permitted to benefit from consecrated money. So I'll give the third party the consecrated money. What's he going to do with it? Okay? So Moraes says, Osu Porea Kama Kama. He goes, he earns, and he pays the debt. Moraes Kama Kama Kodesh Lei. Every little bit that he earns assumes a consecrated status. So how could he use that money to pay back the debt? Moraes says, Boch B'Shava Pruta. He's earning less than a Shava Pruta. So since Hegdish is only affects something which is a Shava Pruta, he's earning less than a Shava Pruta. Poch Shava Pruta. Okay? So therefore, the less than the penny that he earns does not assume a Kedusha status. Because less than a Shava Pruta, you don't have Kedusha. David, what about Chatzi Shir? The Gemara is answering, he earns less than a penny. Less than a penny, Kedusha cannot come upon it, and that's when he pays off the debt. So he's paying less than a penny each time to the creditors that he borrowed from. What about Chatzi Shir? Chatzi Shir also min Torah. And that's, Rashi says, Achtel tistarfa pruta yifreno, deluchal hegdish apoch b'shav pruta. Hegdish cannot come upon shav pruta. Anything less than a pruta. Now, it's less than a pruta. Who that less than a pruta? Who owns that money? Hegdish owns it. Right? Hegdish has an ownership, even though it has no kedusha. Why? Because it's generated by what? Through Hegdish's possession. The hands, which are Kodesh, generated this. But monetarily it's theirs, but Kedusha doesn't have. Because to assume Kedusha, it has to be minimally of Sheva Pruta. So now it works out very good with the Gemara before. The Gemara asked, if the original owner did not allow him to take extra, why would Hegdish be agreeable he should take extra? So it says, because Hegdish has an interest to enhance the physicality of the slave. But if you say that post Sheva Pruta, there's no Hegdish, so you're taking something which is not Hegdish's. The answer is no, monetarily it is Hegdish's. It belongs to Hegdish. Except assuming a Kedusha status, a consecrated status, that's not able to happen unless it's a Sheva Pruta. So why isn't it stealing? The answer is because they're agreeable to this. They want that his physicality should be enhanced.
Hegdish has an estate, and it employs people to do things, and it feeds people. So how are they permitted to receive a salary to get food? How does that work?
It's discussed. How do they do it?
Because if that can be done, then this can be done.
No. There, the earnings, what they earn, the kedusha goes on to those earnings. Person's craftsman, he delivers a finished product. So that finished product now will assume a hegdish status as a result of the kedusha transferring the money onto that object. Yeah, there are situations which are
the man who's the gardener, working in the field. We said a man can take a fruit from a tree.
No, he can't.
So
He's not able to. No.
So the one thing
I was going to speak about that. That's what I'm speaking about now. The Torah says that if a person is a worker, works in a vineyard, right? So the employee is permitted to eat as much as he wants while he's working. He could pick grapes off the vine. It's working in an orchard. He could pick the fruit, eat the fruit while he's working. He just can't put it in his basket and take it home. That's a fringe benefit of an employee. What about, Gemara says, what about if you're an employee of Hegdish? Hegdish owns the vineyard, they own the orchard. You may think that he also should be permitted. Gemara quotes a pasuk, he's not permitted. It's not permitted. It's only if it's an ordinary person, not if it's Hegdish. So we mentioned, Reb Chaim Brisk asks, if it's a question of stealing, so we say a fringe benefit of an employee, he has that right to eat and pick from whatever he's involved in. But Hegdish, we're not talking about stealing. Hegdish is what? You're not permitted benefit from something that's consecrated. What do we need a pasuk to say the employee is not permitted? Of course he's not permitted, because it goes beyond stealing. He's not permitted benefit from something that's consecrated. So what do we need a pasuk to exclude the case of Hegdish? Without the pasuk, I would know he wouldn't be permitted. That's Reb Chaim's question, Reb Chaim Brisker.
Even if it's for survival?
No, we're talking about a fringe benefit of an employee. An ordinary person, you have a fringe benefit. Hegdish, you don't. Why don't you? Because it's a pasuk. To exclude the vineyard that belongs to Hegdish.
Is it possible that the Bet Din can declare these little fruits that the man eats to be hefker?
They could do that. There are no. That is one of the no. But the question is on a Torah level. The Gemara says, how do we know that an employee of Hegdish cannot eat while he works, as an ordinary employee can, normally? There's a meal, there's an exclusion. Reb Chaim, what do I need? An exclusion? We're talking on a Torah level. It's understood he can benefit. An ordinary situation is a question of stealing. So we say, because that's his fringe benefit, it's not stealing.
But you have a clash. On the one hand, you're not allowed a benefit from Hegdish. On the other hand, you're allowed a fringe benefit.
Not in this situation. There is no fringe benefit.
He is a worker.
No, we're talking about the fringe benefit. Of course he pays him. They'll pay him because that's in exchange for his work. It's not exchange. It's not exchange.
And the pair on the field of Hegdish, the poor cannot go there either.
No, of course not. No, definitely not. So Reb Chaim says that the provision of benefiting from something's Hegdish, that's only because you're stealing. But if it's not considered stealing, because it's his right, it's a fringe benefit, so therefore he could even take something that's Hegdish. You're only in violation of benefiting from Hegdish when you have no right to benefit. But over here, as an employee, you would think, as a benefit of an employee, he has that right. So if that case, he could benefit from Hegdish. That's what I would. The Kamash Malon, no, that you cannot benefit. That's why I need the pasuk. But without the pasuk, I would say there's no violation of benefiting from Hegdish. It's only because you're taking something you never had a right to take. But when you have a right to take, that's not considered you're desecrating Hegdish because it's your right. So according to the conclusion, his hands are consecrated. We're saying as long as the money doesn't assume a Hegdish level, even though monetarily it's Hegdish's, why isn't it stealing? The answer is because I have a right to what? Hegdish was agreeable, I should borrow to eat. So that means they're agreeable, then I should take this money and pay the debt. Once it assumes a Hegdish status, I can't pay the debt because the one who receives it is receiving an object of Hegdish. What does he do with it? But if it's post Mishab Pruta, which is not Hegdish, So therefore I can pay off the debt.
So, Rabbi, when you use the word they are agreeable. Who is they?
Hegdish.
Who is Hegdish?
There's an overseer, an administrative Hegdish. He's agreeable. He's agreeable. And
Is that, I mean, so what is it? Is it a...
well,
entity?
he's God's representative. There's a committee who appoints the guardian of Hegdish, or subcategories of this guardianship, and they determine what yes and what's not. It's really the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin does this. The Sanhedrin does this.
So they have the power to say...
To appoint who should be the one, who should not be the one.
And if they wish, they could say...
Yeah, what would they
you're
say?
allowed a fringe benefit, you're allowed to eat from the tree.
No, not if it's consecrated. Not if it's consecrated. But we're saying now because it's less than a shav fruit, it's not consecrated. But it's a question of stealing. How you permit it. So the Gemara said because it's something Hegdish would want, because this enhances the physicality of the slave. So it's something they will, although an ordinary master, he's into the profit margins.
So what do they do with the consecration? They want the poor people who are working on the trees to be able to eat while they go.
No, it
enhances
doesn't
their
help.
physicality.
No. But here we're saying only because it's chulin. Because since it's post mishav fruit, it never assumed the hegdish status. Monetarily, it's theirs.
They pick a grape that's not
Correct.
half a portion.
Right.
Rabbi, the concept of Hegdish disappeared with the destruction
We're gonna
of
stop
the
here.
temple.